BYU takes down Utah 89-84 at the Huntsman Center. The Cougars now have 12 consecutive wins. I'm your BYU insider, Mitch Harper, with KSLSports.com. I just got home from the Huntsman Center in Salt Lake City as BYU gets the big rivalry win over the Utes, again, 89-84, sharing with you my post-game thoughts from the game. I had some issues with the internet inside the Huntsman Center, so my posting and activity that I typically do in-game was a little bit limited this time, but heard the post-game press conference from Kevin Young, which is up on the KSL Sports YouTube feed. You can watch that to hear from AJ DeBonsa and Richie Saunders as well. It's also the audio on the Cougar Tracks podcast feed. But this was a crazy game tonight inside the Huntsman Center. Electric crowd, I thought. It was pretty much, dare I say, 50-50 BYU Utah fans, which is impressive considering there were some hurdles that BYU fans had to overcome to get tickets to this game, yet Cougar Nation showed up once again. 15,558 fans were in attendance for this one to see BYU take down the Utes. First win at the Huntsman Center since 2021. It's been a minute since BYU won in that building, and it's the first win inside that venue for Richie Saunders. And what a night for Richie. I think he's kind of the story of this game. 24 points, 14 rebounds for Richie Saunders. He was a man on a mission to get this victory. Look, the way that the game played out, it's not the most glamorous outcome in terms of scoring margin. I think the offense, once again, showed quite well. 50% from the field. When BYU's shooting at 50%, they are going to win darn near every game. And that's what they ended up on Saturday night, 32 of 64 from the field. Three-point shooting, not great, 6 of 26 for 23%. But, despite the game being closer than I honestly envisioned, I thought BYU was going to blow out Utah. I probably should learn my lesson to never pick that. BYU crushing Utah, that just doesn't happen inside the Huntsman Center. Now, 2 weeks from now in the Marriott Center, yeah, I could predict that. I think BYU handles business comfortably against Utah 2 weeks from now. But in the Huntsman Center, you just got to find a way to win a game. And I think that's ultimately what you take away from this. Yeah, you probably drop in predictive ratings. You saw BYU drop to number 11 in KenPom after tonight's win, but ultimately you get the win. Don't drop games that you're not supposed to, because as we've seen from this Big 12 race, Arizona, Iowa State, Houston, they're not losing games. And Houston's already got a win at home from earlier in the week over Texas Tech, so you can't afford to lose games that you're expected to win, and BYU got that done today. In considering, too, how terrible of a start. In the first 90 seconds, BYU's down 7-0 before they could blink. And I'm thinking to myself, here we go again, another slow start in the Huntsman Center. But BYU kind of negated that before the first media timeout. It was 10-9 after Richie Saunders went off the glass for a tough bucket. Then Terrence Brown got a tough bucket in his own right to get Utah up 11-10 at the first media timeout. I was really impressed with the play of Rob Wright tonight. 23 points, 9 of 19 from the field, 2 of 6 from 3, 6 assists, only 1 turnover on a night where BYU in the first half had 7 turnovers. They ended up with 11. But I thought Rob Wright was composed in this game. I thought he did an excellent job. This might be Rob Wright's best game to date since becoming a BYU Cougar. Now, I know he had the awesome game winner against Clemson, and that was big time. But again, the pace, the feel, the control that Rob Wright played with, I thought he was outstanding. And late in the game, you saw the savvy play from Wright on display at that point guard spot. He had that turnaround to put BYU up 85-80. That was a midi. That was clutch shot, I thought, from Rob Wright. Then he had a beautiful find to Keba Keita. Keita kind of, struggled to gather it. He gathered it, though, laid it in, put BYU up 87-82 with 103 remaining. Utah, of course, did not go away. They kept this thing interesting. It was 87-84 before ultimately Keita gets that baseline stop on Terrence Brown, who loses it out of bounds, and BYU gets the victory. And what a night for Keita. 11 points, and early in the game, he misses the throwdown slam dunk. And again, you're thinking weird things happen at the Huntsman Center for BYU against Utah, but Keita, strong performance, 11 points, 7 rebounds, 5 of 6 from the field. And keep in mind, this is him coming off the ankle, minor ankle injury, nothing too significant. We knew he was going to play tonight, but coming off of that, hopefully this now gets Keita rolling, because it's been a little bit hit and miss in terms of availability for Keita. He had the head injury against UConn. Then he dealt with the illness at the tail end of non-conference play. Then this ankle that kept him out for the Arizona State game earlier in the week. Keita, this is a big win for him. And you knew that he wanted this one bad. He's a senior, last chance to play in the Huntsman Center. He started his career in college at Utah, and he was lapping it up. And look, the Muss from Utah student section, they were letting Keita hear it. They were letting AJ DeBonsa hear it. I mean, the bleep BYU chant started early. Didn't happen the rest of the game. I heard it once early on, maybe twice early on. I didn't hear it in the second half. There were some taunts to Keita. There were some overrated chants to DeBonsa. There was a DUI chant to Kennard Davis. I didn't really like that per se. But, so they were getting in the head of these guys, but I thought Keita was enjoying it. And then after the game, you saw Keita doing the upside down U. Even AJ DeBonsa threw down the upside down U as well. So even though these are guys that years ago, Keita probably a handful of years ago, never in his wildest dreams would have thought this game meant all the world to him, but it does. And same with AJ DeBonsa, who noted in the post-game press conference, probably the most hostile crowd he's played since his high school career, in a rivalry game, huge setting for that he enjoyed this rivalry. And that's what's amazing about this rivalry game, is it brings out such an intensity that people that don't understand it, that don't realize the intensity, you feel it. And again, these are two rosters that have really no ties to the state of Utah outside of Richie, Keanu Dawes. Keita played at Wasatch Academy, but it's a lot of guys that are new to this rivalry, yet they've really embraced it. It became a really intense game. I thought it was a fun game too. I always felt that BYU was the best team in this game, obviously. And in the second half, I thought BYU was in control. They just kind of let Utah continue to hang around in this game. But, BYU always had an answer. And it was a nice response. I liked also what I saw from even Moo Davis, 8 points, 2 of 7 from the field. The efficiency can get better for Moo, but I thought it was one of the better games for Moo offensively, and some defensive success as well for Moo Davis. One thing that I come away with that's maybe a little bit of a concern, and we've talked about it before in the past with this BYU team, just a little bit of a lack of an offensive spark off the bench. The bench points for BYU, 3 points. 2 from Mihailo Boskovic, 1 from Bidu Ahmed. I feel like the bench is still in a much better place than where it was coming out of the MTE in Florida about a month and a half ago, almost 2 months now. But still, there are nights where that bench pretty much only gets 3 more points than I got tonight. And will that backfire against them? Because Utah is not a team that I look at and say is going to be in the top half of the Big 12. They're probably going to be in the bottom 5 of the league. If they play like they did tonight, Utah, they're going to get some teams, and they will get some wins in the column during Big 12 play, but still, it's probably a team that's going to be in the bottom 5 of the league. Will the lack of bench production hurt BYU when you get deeper into the heart of Big 12 play, or more importantly, in March, when you're facing, a Sweet 16 game, if you get that far and things like that? So that's something I kind of take away with. BYU's rotation consisted of Ahmed, Boop. Boop and Ahmed played a little bit too, which was interesting to see, because we've talked about Hadim Boop being a true 4, and he's talked about it as well. That's his natural position. We saw it for a little bit, only 3 minutes between Boop and Bidu. on the same floor. So a different grouping than we've seen at all since BYU joined the team. Tyler Moroz played as well, 7 minutes. Hasn't been the knockdown three-point shooter that I think BYU expected him to be when he signed out of the portal from Idaho. Only one attempt, and he missed it. It was that one in front of the fans opposite the BYU bench in the second half. He missed that one. 7 minutes of play for Tyler Moroz. But BYU gets it done over the Utes, 89-84. And I come away, too, feeling like BYU 3-0 in Big 12 play, just get the win. Just find a way to get the victory. It was also kind of fun, too, to see the back and forth between the two fan bases in the crowds. Nothing too crazy. Again, you always kind of keep your antenna up in these rivalry games of what's going on in the stands a little bit. I don't want to say I'm looking for that, but you're just kind of staying conscious of what's going on in the crowd because, let's face it, there's been a history in this rivalry where there's sometimes some extracurriculars going on in the crowd or something is being said. So kind of watching that back and forth, but I don't think there was anything too crazy happening. I thought it was pretty fun to see when BYU fans would get loud, Utah fans would respond. It was a good atmosphere in the Huntsman Center tonight. It was great Big 12 basketball. Is it safe to say, too, that BYU and Utah has just delivered every time since these two have joined the Big 12? It's been awesome. Football and men's basketball, these games have been off the charts good. And tonight was no different as it adds another chapter to the rivalry and BYU finally gets a breakthrough win at the Huntsman Center. You think about it, only the third win at the Huntsman Center since 2011. It's not often that BYU gets wins there. And when you do get them, you got to enjoy those moments inside the Huntsman Center to get those sort of victories. Some other things that kind of caught my attention from this game, Kevin Young talked about it too. In the second half, around the 11-minute mark, maybe it was earlier in the game. I have to check my notes on that. Keita, oh yes, it was earlier. It was 17:34 to go in the second half. Keita gets his third foul. It looked like it maybe could have been a jump ball, I thought, initially, but I could see where the foul was called. 17:34 to go. I'm thinking BYU's going in. And BYU gets up off the bench, and he's heading to the scorer's table, and then he goes back, and I thought, what just happened here? Well, Kevin Young clarified that Keita told Kevin Young, I'm staying in. I'm staying in. And KY said he liked that fight and that energy from Keita. So that was pretty cool to see. I thought it was a very solid performance from AJ tonight. You know, kind of a pedestrian effort by his standards. And I hate to even say that because the guy still goes for 20 points. 6 of 11 from the field, 8 of 12 from the free throw line. It was funny. There was a Utah fan in front of press row, and he was saying, the Jazz don't want you. They don't want you, AJ. Tank for Boozer. Tank for Boozer. I thought that was kind of fun. But he also had 6 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 turnovers, but 37 minutes of action for AJ. I like, too, the strategic way that Kevin Young gives rest to AJ. It would seem like he only got 3 minutes of rest, but when he would get those breaks, I think it was before the under 8 timeout in the first half, and it was a little bit of an extended period. I think there was a review, so it created a longer stretch of rest for AJ than what you would typically think of, just a quick breather and then back into the game. He had 2 different times where he went out, got some quick breathers, and was able to get some extra time with it being close to under media timeouts from Kevin Young. So very strategic with the way that they find their spots with getting AJ DeBonsa some breaks, because ultimately you got to keep him healthy down the stretch run. But at the same time, it's AJ DeBonsa. You got to keep that guy on the floor because he's going to carry you to greatness. And his fill, again, you know, just the ability to get to the free throw line. You know, he draws fouls that NBA superstars draw. And it's an incredible gift because, I mean, watching BYU as long as I have, no one has ever done that. And you just can't help but marvel at the ability, even on a night that didn't go as smooth as he would have liked, to still get 12 free throw attempts and capitalize on most of them, gets 20 points. Speaking of the free throws, that's an area where BYU needed to get better tonight. 19 of 29 from the free throw line, 66% from the charity stripe, that's got to improve going forward to BYU, because second half, I mean, you could have pulled away and closed this thing out comfortably, but they were not hitting their free throws. There were some front ends missed. There was one where there was a questionable foul call. At least the Ute fans were upset about it. Richie Saunders goes to the foul line, misses both. They're chanting, "Ball don't lie." So take care of the free throws. Those things are free for a reason. For Utah, I thought Terrence Brown had a really productive game, 25 points, 10 of 21 from the field. And Don McHenry, really good player, 21 points from him. Utah had pretty balanced scoring, too. They had 8 guys score for them, 18 points from the bench. Again, if Utah gets that sort of balance the rest of the way in Big 12 play, they're going to get someone at home. I just wonder, are they going to get the crowd to show up for these future games as well? Because when you get an energized, revved up crowd, and BYU is going to face that everywhere they go. K-State had their first non-Kansas sellout crowd in 3 years when BYU rolled into Manhattan. Great crowd tonight. So BYU having AJ, being a top 10 team, they are a circled opponent, and they got to be ready for everyone's best shot. I think that could be a lesson coming out of this too, because I thought, like many, that BYU was going to roll through Utah. Utah had been struggling, and they're still struggling. They're on a losing streak right now, winless in Big 12 play, but still to only win by 5. Again, shows you and gives a lesson to this BYU team. They've got to play their best going forward every single night, because they are going to be a targeted team. You know, I kind of wondered when BYU joined the Big 12 if there would ever be a point where BYU would be a circled opponent. That day is here, because this team has so much star power. People want to see these guys in action, and for good reason. It's an outstanding team. BYU's got the tools and the ability to be a national title contender this season. But it was a big win for BYU. The Cougars now improve to 15-1 on the season, and you got to feel good about where they're at. They return home on Wednesday night for a 9 p.m. tip against TCU. TCU battled against Arizona. They were down 21. They got it to, I think, down to 9. They were fighting back, but ultimately lost to Arizona at home in Fort Worth today. TCU's knocked off some good teams, and they had Kansas on the ropes in Allen Fieldhouse. I don't think that's all that impressive, because I think Kansas is a middle-of-the-road team, honestly, in the Big 12 this year after they lost today against West Virginia. But, you know, it's TCU. It's Tanner Toolson. He'll be making his return back to the Marriott Center, so there's going to be high emotions for him in that game. But it's the Big 12. Every game is tough in this league, and BYU has the chance to continue its undefeated mark so far. You think about this, too. Dating back to last season, BYU has won 11 consecutive regular season Big 12 games. 11 consecutive in the toughest basketball conference in America. They've won 11 straight in the regular season of Big 12 play. Remember, last year they were 6-6 after a loss to Cincinnati in February, and it looked like, oh man, they're not going to go to the NCAA tournament. They then win out the rest of the way in the regular season last year, win their final 8, and then this year they open up the first 3 with a trio of victories to start out 3-0. And now next week it's TCU. Then next Saturday they take on Texas Tech. But good things for this BYU team going forward. But I think one of the big things you take away is that they've got to get ready for everyone's best shot, because it's coming every single week in this Big 12 with the star power that BYU has. But a solid win. And you can never take for granted rivalry victories. You see, you know, kind of the administrative personnel that were sitting behind the BYU bench. Brian Santiago was there with Vice President Keith Vorkink, President C. Shane Reese, and next to President Reese was Dawson Baker and his wife. Like, this game means a ton to many people. And I like that Kevin Young brought that up in the post-game press conference, that this game means a lot to BYU's athletic department, because you want to win the state. You want to be the top program every single year, and that's reflected by wins and losses in this rivalry, and BYU got that done today. Also, at halftime in this game, Utah brought out football coach Morgan Scalley, and they introduced their football staff, and BYU fans, they were chanting BYU or something Cougars. I can't remember what the chant was, to the point where Morgan Scally got interrupted by BYU fans. That was quite the decision to bring out the new football staff in front of a crowd that was 50% BYU fans. But Cougar fans made their voices heard in this game as, again, BYU gets it done 89-84 at the Huntsman Center. Get ready for a 9 p.m. tip on Wednesday. It's going to be a late night at the Marriott Center. We'll have pregame coverage on KSL NewsRadio at 8 o'clock. Cougar Tracks that night will air at 6:30 p.m. And, of course, every day throughout the week at noon on the KSL Sports YouTube page and my personal X account. So subscribe to this podcast. If you missed any part of this show, listen on the Cougar Tracks podcast feed wherever you get your podcast and KSL Sports YouTube. Have a good night, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your weekend as the Cougs get it done 89-84 over the Utes. 15-1 now on the season. More BYU basketball coverage on KSLSports.com.